The Celtic otherworld is a mysterious place filled with gods and spirits. Sometimes it's seen as a land of the dead, but more often it's a magical world that exists beside ours. Mortals may enter it only if invited by its dwellers. Otherwise, it's dangerous. In Irish tradition, the entrance to the otherworld is often through a Sidhe, an ancient burial mound, or sometimes through caves, lakes, or faraway islands in the Western Sea. But once inside, time and space work differently, and returning can be dangerous. One night during the autumn festival of Samhain, Lleu and Blodeuwedd of Connacht were gathered with their warriors at their fort in Cú Chulainn. The day before, they had executed 2 prisoners, and now they were drinking and waiting for a pot of meat to finish cooking. While they sat there, Lleu stood up and challenged his men. "Whoever ties a green twig to the foot of one of the dead prisoners on the gallows will earn any reward from me, even my golden sword." Samhain was a night of fear, full of ghosts and spirits. The bravest warriors feared it. Each man stood up and said he'd try, but none made it to the gallows. They all ran back to the hall before reaching the dead. "I'll do it," said a young warrior named Nara. "I'll earn that prize." So Nara walked out into the dark, heading toward the hanging bodies. He tried 3 times to tie a twig to the foot of one prisoner, but it kept falling off. "You need to pin the twig in place," said the dead man. "Otherwise it won't stay." So Nara added a spike to the twig. "Well done, Nara," said the corpse. "Now, as a favor, could you help me? I was very thirsty when I died. Could you carry me to get a drink?" "Of course," Nara answered. He lifted the dead man onto his back and went to the nearest house, but it was surrounded by a ring of fire. "I can't drink here," said the corpse. "The hearth is always clean in this house. Let's try another." They moved to the second house, but this one was surrounded by water. "Don't go to that house," the dead man told Nara. "They never leave water in the tub after washing. Try the next house." At the third house, the prisoner went inside and drank from the tubs of leftover water. Then he spit a mouthful of it on the people living there, and they died. That is why it is said, one should never leave dirty water in a tub or leave the fire uncleaned at night. Nara carried the corpse back to the gallows. But when he returned to Lleu and Blodeuwedd's hall, he saw something shocking. The fort of Cú Chulainn was in flames, and all the heads of the people had been piled up by enemy soldiers. Nara followed the attackers into the cave beneath Cú Chulainn. As the group entered the Sidhe, one of them said, "There's a mortal among us." "Yes," another said, "I can feel the weight." Word spread among the soldiers until they all knew that Nara had come along. When they arrived at the Sidhe King's hall, the ruler called for Nara. "Why are you here?" he asked. "I came with your army," said Nara. "Go to a nearby house," said the king. "A woman lives there alone. Tell her I sent you to stay with her. In return, you must bring me firewood every day." Nara did as he was told, and the woman welcomed him kindly. For the next 3 days, as Nara delivered the wood, he saw a strange sight. A blind man carrying a lame man came out of the king's hall each day. They would walk to a spring in front of the house and stop. "Is it still there?" the blind man asked. "Yes, it's still there," the lame man would reply. Then they would return. Nara asked the woman why they did this. "They go there to look at Bran's crown," she explained. "It's a golden crown that belongs to the king and lies in the spring." "Why those 2?" Nara asked. "The king made one blind and the other lame so they couldn't steal it, but he trusted them to guard it." Nara thought about this and asked her another question. "When I entered this Sidhe, I saw Cú Chulainn burning and everyone dead. What happened?" "That was a vision of the future," she replied. "It hasn't happened yet." But it will, unless you warn your people. Right now they're still sitting by the fire. It's still the same salmon night. My king plans to destroy them because it's been foretold that Ailill and Medb will one day attack the Sidhe and steal the crown. But how will they believe I've been to the otherworld? Asked Nara. Bring back summer fruit and flowers, she said, and gave him wild garlic, primroses, and buttercups. Warn me when the army comes, she said. I'm carrying your child and will bear you a son. I'll tell the king you're sick and take the firewood myself each day. Nara returned to Cú Chulainn and found his people still gathered by the fire, as if no time had passed. He told Ailill and Medb everything and showed them the summer plants as proof. Nara stayed at their court for a year until the next Semaine. Then Ailill sent him back to the side to bring his wife, child, and possessions. When he arrived, she welcomed him. Here is your son, she said. Now go to the court with firewood. The king is waiting. Nara obeyed. The king was unhappy that Nara had taken the woman without permission, but let him go without punishment. Later, Ailill and Medb's army attacked the Sidhe, stole Brian's crown and many treasures, and returned to Cú Chulainn. But Nara stayed behind in the Sidhe with his wife and child, and he will remain there until the world ends. One day, Cormac, king of Ireland and grandson of Conn, was at the hill of Tara when he saw an old warrior walking alone across the fortress lawn. In the man's hand was a golden branch with 3 shining apples. When he shook it, it made the most peaceful music anyone had ever heard, so soothing that even women in labor or wounded men would fall asleep. Cormac longed to have the branch and offered the man the 3 best gifts in Ireland in return. The warrior agreed, but made Cormac promise to give the gifts whenever he came to claim them. A year passed, and the warrior returned. He asked for Cormac's daughter, Ailbe. Though it pained him, Cormac kept his word and gave her away. The women of Ireland wailed, but Cormac shook the branch, and everyone fell asleep. The next year, the warrior came back and demanded Cormac's son, Cairpre. The men of Ireland were angry, but again Cormac used the branch to put them all to sleep. After another year, the warrior asked for Cormac's wife, Aithne. Though filled with sorrow, Cormac honored his promise and gave her away. But as the man took Aithne, jealousy overwhelmed Cormac. He chased after them, but a thick mist suddenly surrounded him, and he lost sight of the two. Cormac wandered through the fog and found himself on a vast plain. In front of him was a great fortress with silver walls. The building inside had a golden half and a roof made of bird wings. Horsemen from the otherworld kept replacing wings as they constantly fell off. Cormac also saw a man feeding a fire with whole trees. As soon as one tree burned, he would return with another. He could never rest, for the fire had to be kept alive. Eventually, Cormac reached the heart of the fortress. A beautiful queen and a handsome king sat on thrones. After the king's feet were washed, another man entered carrying a pig, a hatchet, and a staff. He greeted Cormac and welcomed him. Then he killed the pig, chopped it into pieces for a cauldron, and used the staff as firewood. "This pig," said the man, "won't cook unless each of the 4 of us tells a true tale." "You go first," the king said. The man told his story. "When I started here, your household had only 6 cows, 1 ox, and me. I plowed a field with the ox, but our neighbor's cattle kept straying onto it. I caught them, and in return, the farmer gave me this pig, hatchet, and staff. Since then, every night I kill the pig and burn the staff. But in the morning, they are whole again." A quarter of the pig cooked. Then the king spoke. "We only plow once a year. I sow alone, and in 1 hour the field is ripe. The next day there are 3 grain stacks in the field. On the 3rd day it is all stored in the house, and it never spoils." Half the pig was done. Next, the queen said, I own 7 cows and 7 sheep. Their milk feeds everyone, and their wool clothes the entire kingdom. 3/4 of the pig cooked. Then Cormac told the story of how he came through the mist and lost his family. What you saw, said the king, was the real world. The horsemen fixing the roof are like craftsmen, always working, but their work doesn't last. The man feeding the fire is like farmers, constantly using up resources and needing more. This fortress is the land of promise. I am the one who gave you the branch and took the 3 gifts. I am Manannán, son of Lleu. At last, the pig finished cooking. A portion was given to Cormac, but he refused to eat unless 50 others joined him. Then Manannán sang a song, and Cormac fell asleep. When he awoke, 50 people were seated at the table, including his daughter, son, and wife. He was overjoyed. A cup made of red gold was brought before him. That cup, said Cormac, is the thing I want most, though it seems very easy to break. Manannán struck the cup, and it broke into 3 pieces. What a shame, said Cormac. This is a cup of truth, said Manannán. If I tell the truth, it will be made whole again. I tell you now, your daughter and wife were never touched since the day I took them. The cup became whole. Manannán then gave it to Cormac and sent him and his family to bed. The next morning, they woke up back at Tara. The land of promise was gone. Connla of the red hair, the son of Conn of 100 battles, was one day at Uisnech in the middle of Ireland with his father and the warriors, when he noticed a strange woman in unusual clothing walking toward him. Where do you come from, woman? Connla asked. I come from the land of the living, she said. In my world, there is no death or evil. We enjoy endless feasts and live in peace. We live in a great Sidhe, and we are known as the people of the Sidhe. Who are you talking to? Conn asked his son, for no one but Connla could see or hear the woman. He speaks to a beautiful woman, she answered, one who will never grow old or die. I love Connla of the red hair and invite him to the plains of delight, where the victorious Bodach rules forever in a land without sorrow or tears. Come with me, Connla, and you will never know death. Conn turned to his druid, Coran, and said, Stop this woman from taking my son with her magic. Coran then chanted a spell that made the woman's voice disappear, and Connla could no longer see her. But before she vanished, she tossed Connla a golden apple. For a whole month after, Connla ate nothing but that apple. No matter how much he ate, it never grew smaller. Then Connla began to miss the woman deeply. A month later, as he walked by the sea with his father, he saw the same woman again. Connla sits in the seat of the dead, she said, waiting for death to come. But the people of the land of the living invite you to join us. When Conn heard her again, he called for his druid. Conn of 100 battles, said the woman, druids will not rule forever. One day a man named Patrick will come to Ireland and prove their magic false. Don't listen to her, my son, Conn pleaded. I love my people, father, Connla said, but I long to go with her. Come now, Connla, said the woman. Leave your worries behind. My crystal boat is waiting. We can reach a world more beautiful than this by nightfall. Connla turned from his father and ran to the crystal boat. Conn could only watch in sadness as his son sailed away and was never seen again. Long ago, a king of Ireland named Eochaid Mugmadon ruled at Tara. He often raided Britain and brought back captives as slaves. One of these slaves was Ciaran, the daughter of the Saxon king, Saxal Balb. She gave birth to Eochaid's son, Nile. But Ciaran and her son were hated by Eochaid's wife, Mongfind, who had 4 sons of her own, Brian, Ailil, Fiachra, and Fergus. While Ciaran was pregnant, Mongfind forced her to carry heavy water buckets, hoping she would miscarry. Even when she went into labor, She was made to keep working and gave birth on the grass beside her bucket. Because of Mongfind, she could not even touch her child and had to leave him exposed to the birds. No one dared to help her, not even the bravest warriors, because they feared Mongfind. That day, a poet named Torna passed by and saw birds pecking at the baby. He picked the boy up and saved him. He sang that the child would grow up to be a great king. Torna then raised the baby as his own. Years later, Nile saw his mother still drawing water. He begged her to stop, but she couldn't. Mongfind still controlled her. Nile then brought her to the palace and dressed her in royal robes. Mongfind was furious, especially when warriors began saying that Nile should be king. She went to Eochaid and demanded he choose which of his sons would be heir to the throne. "I will not choose," said Eochaid, "but I will let the druid Sithchen decide." Sithchen brought all 5 of Eochaid's sons into a blacksmith's hut and set it on fire to see what each boy would bring out. Brian came out carrying the blacksmith's hammers. "Brian will become a warrior," said Sithchen. Fiachra brought out a bucket of ale and the bellows. "Fiachra will be known for his charm and skill," said the druid. Ailil came out with a chest of weapons. "Ailil will be a bringer of vengeance," said Sithchen. Fergus came with a bundle of dry sticks. "Fergus will fade and be forgotten," he said. Finally, Nile came out carrying the heavy anvil. "Nile is strong and steady like an anvil. He will rule over the others," declared Sithchen. Mongfind was furious and refused to accept the druid's decision. She ordered her sons to take Nile deep into the woods to kill him while out hunting. That night, after the hunt, the boys became very thirsty. They sent Fergus to find water. At a well, he met a hideous old woman. Her eyes were dark, her nose twisted, her teeth green, and her body deformed. "Give me water," said Fergus. "Only if you kiss me," she replied. "I'd rather die thirsty," he said, and returned to tell the others. Each brother went in turn, but none would kiss the old woman. "I will go," said Nile. At the well, the old woman repeated her request. "I will not only kiss you," said Nile, "but I'll lie with you." He kissed her without hesitation, and as he did, she transformed into a stunning woman dressed in purple. "Who are you?" Nile asked. "I am the spirit of sovereignty," she answered. "Because you accepted me, kingship will be yours, and your descendants will rule Ireland." Nile filled his cup with water and returned to his brothers. He refused to share it until they swore loyalty to him. Back at court, they told everyone what had happened. "My judgment stands," said Sithchen. "Nile and his line will rule Ireland from this day forward." Once, Bran, son of Fable, was walking alone near his hall when he heard strange, beautiful music. He looked around, but the music always stayed behind him. It was so soothing that he eventually fell asleep. When he woke up, a silver branch with white blossoms lay beside him. He brought it into his hall. Suddenly, a woman in strange clothing appeared in the middle of the room and began to sing, "I bring a branch from a far-off land of silver with crystal blossoms. There is a lovely island, a place of joy. Let Bran set out to find it. Maybe he will reach its shores." As she finished, the branch flew from Bran's hand into hers, and she vanished. Bran gathered 3 groups of 9 men and sailed out to find this island. After 2 days and nights at sea, a man in a chariot riding over the waves appeared and introduced himself as Manannán, son of Lleu. He sang, "Bran thinks he sails across the sea, but from my chariot, it looks like he rides a field of flowers. Let him row onward. The island of women waits. He will reach it before sunset." Bran soon arrived at an island, but it wasn't the island of women. On the shore, people laughed endlessly. They would not speak. Bran sent a man ashore, But he also started laughing and ignored the calls to return. They left him behind. This place became known as the Island of Joy. Next, they reached the Island of Women. A woman called to Bran, "You are welcome here, Bran, son of Feeble." But Bran hesitated. Then she threw a ball of yarn at him, holding one end. It stuck to Bran's hand, and she pulled his boat ashore. The women led them to a grand house with 27 beds, one for each man to share with a woman. A feast was served, and no matter how much they ate or drank, nothing ever ran out. They thought they had stayed on the Island of Women for only a year, but in truth, many years had gone by. Life on the island gave them everything they could ever want, and they were content. Eventually, one of the men, named Nectan, began to miss home. He begged Bran again and again to return to Ireland. After much pleading, Bran finally agreed. The men made ready to leave the island. Before they set sail, the women warned them not to go. They said they would regret it, but Bran would not listen. So the women gave one last warning. If they must return, they should be careful not to step on Irish soil. Bran and his men left the Island of Women and stopped first at the Island of Joy. They hoped to bring back the man they had left behind. After that, they sailed to Ireland and saw a group of people gathered on the shore. "I am Bran, son of Fable," Bran called out to them from the boat. "That can't be," someone shouted back. "The story of Bran's voyage is one of our old legends." Nectan, eager to return home, jumped out of the boat and swam to land. But as soon as he stepped onto the shore, he crumbled into dust, as though he had been dead and buried for hundreds of years. When Bran saw what happened, he stayed in the boat with the others. He called out to the people on shore and told them everything about his journey. Then he said goodbye and sailed away into the sea, never to be seen again. In early Ireland, life was centered around the Tuath, or tribe. Anyone outside of this tribal world was seen as living in the wild, often as an outlaw. These outlaws lived by their own rules, and the most famous among them was Fionn. He was a great warrior, a gifted poet, and a famous lover. Like the hero Cú Chulainn, Fionn was powerful and brave, but unlike others, he stayed apart from society, living on the edges. His stories were among the most beloved in medieval Ireland, and were told for centuries. Once, a war broke out between Cumhaill, son of Trenmor, and Uirgriu, son of Lugach Cor, over who would lead the outlaw bands of Ireland. Uirgriu had an ally named Morna, whose son Gaul killed Cumhaill in battle and took his head and weapons. From that moment, there was always a rivalry between Cumhall's family and the sons of Morna. Cumhall's wife Muirn was pregnant when he died. She gave birth to a boy named Demin, and because the sons of Morna wanted to kill the child, she gave him to 2 warrior druid women, Bodmal and Gráinne, to raise in secret. They took him deep into the forests near Sleevebloom and trained him in battle and magic. One day, while Demin was still a boy, he went hunting alone and saw ducks on a lake. He threw his spear and knocked the feathers off one duck, stunning it. He brought it back to the hut. It was his first hunt. Later, Demin joined a group of poets who were hiding from the sons of Morna. While with them, he got scurvy and lost his hair, earning the name Demin the Bald. An outlaw named Fiacall attacked the group and killed all the poets except Demna. The druid women found him alive at Fiacall's house and brought him home. Another day, Demn went to the plains near the Liffey River and saw boys playing hurley outside a fort. He joined their game, but the boys didn't like it. The next day, they sent a quarter of their group to fight him, but Demon beat them all. Then they sent a third. He beat them too. Finally, the whole group came at him, and he still won. "What's your name?" they asked. "Demon," he said. the boys went to the lord of the fort and told him what happened. "Kill him," said the lord. "We can't," they answered. "He's too strong." "What does he look like?" "He's fair and handsome." "Fionn." "Then call him Fionn," said the lord. A week later, Fionn came back and saw the boys swimming. They dared him to dunk them. He jumped in and held 9 of them underwater until they begged for mercy. After that, everyone called him Fionn. One time, Fionn went hunting with his foster mothers and saw red deer on a hill. "Too bad we can't catch one," they said. "I can," said Fionn, and he ran after the herd, catching 2 by the horns. From then on, he did the hunting. One day, the women told Fionn it was time to leave. The sons of Morna were getting closer, and they could no longer protect him. Fionn went to the king of Bantry and offered to hunt for him, hiding his real name. He amazed everyone with his skill. "If Cumhaill had a son," the king said, "he'd be you." Fionn then left Bantry and went to Kerry, where the king taught him to play fidchul, an old Irish board game. Fionn won 7 games in a row. "Who are you?" the king asked. "No one," said Fionn. "You must be Cumhall's son. Leave now before the sons of Morna find and kill you." Fionn moved on to Cullen and stayed with a blacksmith named Lochan, who had a daughter named Cruthan. She fell in love with Fionn. "Even though I don't know who you are," said Lochan, "you may sleep with my daughter." Lochan made Fionn a spear and warned him about a fierce pig, a monster sow called the Live One, who had destroyed Munster. Of course, Fionn went straight toward the danger. He found the pig, killed it with his spear, and brought its head back as a bride price for Cruthan. The mountain became known as Slive Muck, So Mountain. Later, Fionn went to Connaught and saw a woman crying in the woods. Her eyes were bleeding. "Why are you crying?" he asked. "My son was killed by a cruel warrior," she said. "I'll get revenge," Fionn promised. He found and killed the warrior. Among his things was a treasure bag that had once belonged to Finn's father, Cumhaill. Fionn then found some of his father's old men hiding in the woods. He returned the treasure to them and told them everything. Then Fionn went to the Boyne River to study poetry with the great poet Fianna. He knew he needed the power of poetry before facing his enemies. Fianna had been trying for 7 years to catch the salmon of knowledge at Feck's pool. It was said that whoever ate it would know all things. Finally, he caught the salmon and gave it to Fionn to cook, warning him not to eat any of it. Fionn obeyed, but while cooking it, he burned his thumb and instinctively put it in his mouth. "Did you eat the fish?" asked Fionn. "No," said Fionn, "but I touched it with my thumb and tasted it." "What's your name?" "Demne." "No longer," said the poet. "From now on you are truly Fionn. The salmon was meant for you." After that, whenever Fionn needed wisdom, he put his thumb in his mouth and sang magic spells. All knowledge would come to him that way. After this, Fionn went to study poetry with Cethern, son of Fintan. Every year during Samhain, Cethern would leave to visit the Sidhe Mound of El, a fairy woman known as the most beautiful in all of Ireland. Many men came each Samhain to win her love, because only on that night were the fairy mounds open and the worlds of mortals and fairies connected. But every year, one man from each group died trying, as no one could win her heart. Fionn then left Cethern and visited Fionn the warrior. He told him about the men who died each year at Eel's Mound. Fionn advised Fionn to hide during the next Samhain between the 2 hills of Munster, known as the Paps of Anu, named after the goddess Anu. At the Paps of Anu, Cethern had told him, "You will witness something amazing." So, on the night of Samhain, Fionn waited quietly in the valley. When the sun set, he saw firelight from the 2 fairy mounds. They were open to the world of men. a man came out of one mound carrying a tray with a live pig, a roasted calf, and wild garlic, heading to the other mound. Fionn threw his spear in the dark and struck the man, seeking justice for those who had died. He heard the cries of fairy women. Rushing forward, he caught one and made her promise to return his spear before he let her go. She kept her word. After that, the fairy folk of Ireland held Fionn in great respect. Years later, when Fionn was an old man, his son Oisin and his friend Diarruing found him sitting on a hill at sunrise. "Why are you up so early?" asked Oisin. "I haven't slept well since my wife Megnice died," Fionn replied. "A man without a woman turns and tosses all night." "I know the perfect woman for you," said Diarruing. "Her name is Gráinne. She's the daughter of Cormac MacAirt, the High King of Tara. She's the most beautiful woman alive." "Cormac and I have never gotten along," Fionn said. "I won't ask him and give him a chance to say no." "Leave that to us," said Oisin. Oisin and Diarruing went to Tara during a great feast. The king welcomed them and brought them aside. "What can I do for you?" asked Cormac. "We're here on Finn's behalf," said Oisin. "He wants to marry your daughter." "I don't think so," replied Cormac. "It's not that I dislike Fionn. That's not the issue. The truth is Gráinne has turned down all the best men in Ireland. You can ask her yourself. That way, if she says no, it won't be on me." He called his daughter, and Oisin delivered Finn's proposal. "If you think Fionn would make a good husband," she told her father, "then I agree." Surprised by her answer, Cormac sent word to Fionn, inviting him to come to Tara for the wedding feast on a set day. Weeks passed, and the wedding day arrived. Fionn and his warriors came to Tara, where Cormac and Gráinne welcomed them. At the grand feast, Gráinne sat next to a druid named Dyer. "Who is that beside Oisin?" Gráinne asked. "That's Oscar, Oisin's son and Finn's grandson," said the druid. "And next to him?" "That's Cumhaill, the fastest man in Ireland." "And beside him?" "Gaul MacMorna, a fearsome fighter." "And who is the handsome man next to Oisin on the left?" "That's Diarmuid, son of Dweibhne, the most charming man in Ireland. He's a close friend of the god Oengus." "I'd like to speak to him in private," Gráinne said quietly. She then sent a maid to her room for a special golden cup with gems. She filled it with wine and gave it to Fionn, inviting everyone to drink deeply. As the goblet passed around, the guests slowly began to fall asleep. Only Oisin and Diarmuid had not drunk when the wine was gone. Gráinne then sat between them. "Oisin," she said, "why would you ask me to marry an old man like your father? Wouldn't you rather have me for yourself?" "My lady," Oisin said in shock, "I could never betray my father like that." Gráinne turned to Diarmuid. "What about you, Diarmuid?" she asked. "Will you marry me?" "Never," he said firmly. "You are incredibly beautiful, but I can't take another man's bride on her wedding night." "Is that so?" said Gráinne. "Then I place a geas, a sacred vow, on you. If you don't take me with you now as your wife, shame and ruin will follow you." Diarmuid cried out in despair and asked Oisin for advice. Oisin said the geas was unfair, but since it had been made, he should leave with Gráinne. He warned Diarmuid that Fionn would never forgive him and would chase them without rest. So the couple fled from the hall and found horses in a nearby field. They rode quickly away from Tara and didn't stop until they reached the Shannon River. "These horses will make it easy for Fionn to catch us," said Diarmuid. "Then we'll walk from here," said Gráinne. They crossed a shallow part of the river and entered a thick oak forest in Connacht. Diarmuid gathered birch branches to make a bed for Gráinne. The next morning, Fionn awoke and realized what had happened. He sent men to chase after them, but Oisin had already sent his best hound ahead to warn Diarmuid. The dog found them and nudged Diarmuid awake. Oisin has sent this dog, said Gráinne. We must go now. I won't run, said Diarmuid. I'd rather face Fionn here. Fionn led his men to Connacht and surrounded the forest. Diarmuid and Gráinne had no way to escape. A cold wind swept through the trees and into the clearing where the couple stood. From the wind came Angus of the Tuatha De Danann. Again in trouble, my friend? Angus asked Diarmuid. Why is it always about a woman? Please, Angus, said Diarmuid. Take Gráinne to safety. I will face Fionn myself. Angus wrapped Gráinne in his cloak and vanished into the air. Diarmuid then charged at Fionn and jumped right over him, running across plains and hills until he reached the hut where Angus and Gráinne were roasting a pig. As they ate, he told them everything that had happened. Then Diarmuid lay with Gráinne and they rested. Fionn was furious, but his men didn't want to fight Diarmuid. Let it go, Oisin told his father. Let them be. There are other women. Never, said Fionn. He insulted me. I won't let him live. Fionn chased the couple across Ireland for years, through forests, over mountains, across rivers and lakes. He even hired warriors from overseas, since his own men didn't want to harm their friend. Still, Diarmuid protected Gráinne and loved her deeply. Even after she became pregnant, they kept running. Finally, after a long time, the warriors of Ireland persuaded Fionn to stop. Though angry, he finally gave in. Diarmuid and Gráinne settled down and lived happily. They had 4 sons and a daughter. Years later, when the children were nearly grown, Gráinne asked Diarmuid if she could invite Fionn to a feast. She hoped they could make peace. Diarmuid was unsure, but eventually agreed. When Fionn came, he and Diarmuid went hunting together. They set out to kill a wild boar that had been terrorizing the area near Ben Bulben. But during the hunt, the beast attacked and wounded Diarmuid badly. Fionn and his men found him lying on the ground, still alive. I wish Gráinne and all the women of Ireland could see you now, Fionn said coldly. You're not so handsome anymore. You can save me, whispered Diarmuid. You were given healing powers when you ate the salmon at the Boyne. If you bring water in your hands, I'll live. Oscar, Finn's grandson, begged him to help. He's one of us and a good man. Fionn stood silent for a while, then walked to a nearby spring and filled his hands with water. But on the way back, he thought about Gráinne and let the water fall. Oscar sent him again, but twice more the water slipped through Finn's fingers. By the 3rd time, Diarmuid was dead. When Gráinne heard, she told her sons that Fionn had let their father die. A bitter war broke out between the families. To save her children, Gráinne made peace with Fionn and later married him. She and Fionn lived together in peace for the rest of their lives. The 4 loosely connected medieval stories, known as the Mabinogi, are rich and detailed tales. Though they stand on their own within European medieval literature, they also go back to much older Celtic traditions. These stories share many themes with early Irish myths and legends. Long ago, there was a prince named Pwyll who ruled the kingdom of Deft in Wales. One day, while staying at his court in Arbroath, he decided to go hunting in a forested area of his land called Glyn Cúch. He rode out with his hounds and companions, but while they hunted, he became separated from the others. He heard his dogs barking in the distance, but also heard another pack nearby. Following the sounds, he came into a clearing and found his own hounds, but also saw another group of dogs chasing a stag and bringing it down. These dogs were unlike any he had seen before. They were bright white with red ears, which made them look even more striking. Pwyll scared them away and let his own hounds eat the stag. While his dogs fed, a rider came into the clearing. He wore gray hunting clothes and rode a gray horse. "I know who you are," said the man, "but I won't greet you." Maybe you're so high-ranking you don't have to greet me, Pwyll replied. No, said the man. It's because you were rude. My dogs killed the stag, but you chased them off and fed your own. I won't fight you now, but I'll have my poets mock you so badly that it'll be worth 100 stags. My lord, said Pwyll, I'm truly sorry. What I did was wrong. Can I make peace with you? You can, the rider said, if you help me with a task. I am Aran, king of Anwfn. Another king, Halfgan, constantly makes war against me. If you defeat him for me, I'll forgive your insult. I'm willing, said Pwyll. But how can I do this? We will trade places, said Aran. I will give you my appearance and mannerisms. You will rule in Anwfn as me for 1 year, and sleep beside my queen every night. A year from today, you'll meet Halfgan in battle. Hit him only once. It will be enough to kill him. If he begs for another blow, refuse him. 1 strike is fatal, but more will heal him. And who will rule my kingdom in that time? Pwyll asked. I will, in your place, said Aran. No one in Dyfed will know I'm not you. Pwyll agreed. Aran then changed Pwyll's appearance and sent him to Anfon. When Pwyll arrived, everyone welcomed him as their king. He entered grand halls and chambers, and the queen was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. They shared a fine dinner, then went to bed. But that night, and every night for a year, Pwyll turned away from her and said nothing. He was kind and respectful each day, but never acted as her husband. After a year, Pwyll met Halfgan at the agreed time and place. They met at a ford in the river, and with a single powerful blow, Pwyll knocked Halfgan to the ground and fatally wounded him. Finish me, begged Halfgan. You've already won. Ask someone else, Pwyll said. I will not strike again. Then I am dying, said Halfgan. Now you are the only king in Anwfn. Pwyll accepted the loyalty of Halfgan's men, then returned to the meadow where he had first met Aran. Greetings, Pwyll, said Aran. How have things gone? Very well, said Pwyll. I've done everything you asked. Then I thank you, said Aran, and I will be your friend forever. Aran changed Pwyll back to his own form and returned to his kingdom in Andwf. He greeted his queen and spent the night with her. When she asked why he had waited a whole year to be with her, he was amazed at Pwyll's honor and self-control. Then he told her everything that had happened. Meanwhile, Pwyll returned to his court in Arberth, in the land of Dyfed. He learned that while he had been away, his kingdom had been ruled with fairness and wisdom. He told his nobles the whole story and revealed that Aran had ruled in his place. From that time on, Pwyll and Aran became the best of friends. Because of how well he ruled Anwfn, people no longer called him just the Prince of Dyfed, but also Pwyll, King of Andwfn. Sometime later, Pwyll held a great feast at his court. After the meal, he went to a place called the Mound of Arberth. My lord, one of his men said, anyone who sits on this mound either sees a marvel or suffers a great misfortune. I'm not afraid, said Pwyll. As he sat there, he suddenly saw a woman in golden silk riding by on a beautiful white horse. The horse appeared to move slowly and gently along the road. Struck by her beauty, Pwyll told one of his men to go meet her, but no matter how fast he ran, the woman stayed ahead of him. She seemed to move slowly, but he couldn't catch up. When the man returned, he said it was impossible. Pwyll then sent someone on horseback, but again the woman stayed out of reach. She eventually vanished, and Pwyll returned to his court. The next day, Pwyll came back to the mound with the fastest horse in his kingdom. When the woman appeared again, he sent his best rider. Still, she moved slowly, but he couldn't reach her. That night, Pwyll returned to his hall with his men, and the next day he came back to the mound once more, this time with his own horse. As soon as he arrived, the woman appeared again. Pwyll mounted his horse and rode after her, but had no more luck than before. Finally, he shouted to her, "My lady, please stop, for the sake of the man you love most." She stopped and turned to him. "I will gladly wait," she said, "but you could have saved your horses if you had just asked sooner." "Forgive me, lady," said Pwyll. "But who are you, and why do you ride this road?" "I am Rhiannon, daughter of Hen," she replied. "I ride this road to find you. I've loved you for as long as I can remember. I've come to ask you for a favor." "If it's within my power, I'll do anything for you," said Pwyll. "Of all the women I've seen, none have I ever wanted more than you." "Then my request," said Rhiannon, "is that you promise to marry me." "The sooner the better," said Pwyll. "You can choose the time and place." "Then let it be 1 year from tonight, at my father's court," she said. "I'll prepare a great feast for the occasion. Just don't forget your promise." "I give you my word," said Pwyll. Then they parted. A year later, Pwyll rode out with 100 men to the palace of Hen. The king and Rhiannon welcomed him warmly, and they sat together at the wedding feast. After the meal, a richly dressed nobleman entered the hall and bowed to Pwyll. "My lord," he said, "may I ask a favor?" "I'll gladly do whatever you ask," Pwyll replied. "You fool," Rhiannon whispered to him. "Why did you say that?" "But he gave his word, my lady," said the stranger. "All of these witnesses heard it." "Well then," said Pwyll, "what do you want?" "Not much," said the man. "Only that you give me Rhiannon to be my wife." Pwyll was stunned and said nothing. "No man has ever acted more foolishly," said Rhiannon to him. "That man is Gaul, son of Clud. He's been trying to marry me for a long time. Now you must give me to him or lose your honor." "But how can I do that?" asked Pwyll. "Just agree," she replied. "I'll make sure he never truly gets me." Pwyll promised to give Rhiannon to Gaul a year from that day. Rhiannon gave Pwyll a magic bag and told him to come back in a year dressed as a beggar. He should ask Gaul to fill the bag with food. Then she sent him back to Dyfed. A year later, Pwyll and his men came back to the court of Hen for Gaul and Rhiannon's wedding feast. Pwyll wore ragged clothes and broken shoes. After the feast, just as Gaul was about to take Rhiannon to bed, Pwyll stepped forward and asked him to fill his little bag with food. "Of course," said Gaul. "That's a small favor." He told the servants to put the best food into the bag, but no matter how much they put in, the bag stayed empty. "That's quite a strange bag," said Gaul. "Will it ever be full?" "No, my lord," said Pwyll, "unless a nobleman like you steps inside it and presses the food down." Gaul stepped into the bag, and at once he slipped deep into it. Pwyll quickly tied it shut and called out to his hidden men. He told them to beat the bag with their sticks. Gaul cried out and begged for mercy, but they didn't stop until he promised never to try to marry Rhiannon again and not to seek revenge. Then Pwyll let him go, and Gaul left the court in shame. Pwyll took Gaul's place beside Rhiannon at the table and later spent the night with her as husband and wife. In the morning he returned to Arbroath with his new queen. Pwyll and Rhiannon ruled Dyfed happily for 3 years, but the nobles complained that their lord had no heir. They urged him to take a new wife who could give him a son. Pwyll asked them to wait 1 more year, and they agreed. Before the year ended, Rhiannon gave birth to a son, and the kingdom rejoiced. 6 women were brought to help care for the baby, but one night they all fell asleep while watching the child. When they woke up, the baby was gone. "We will be punished for this," they said. "No," one of them replied. "Some puppies were born last night. Let's kill them and spread the blood on the queen while she sleeps. We'll say she killed her son. That way we won't be blamed." The others agreed. When Rhiannon woke up, she asked for her son. The women, crying, told everyone she had murdered him. Rhiannon knew it wasn't true. But their story spread, and Pwyll was forced to punish her. The elders judged her guilty and gave her a harsh sentence. For 7 years, she had to sit by the gate of Arbroath, tell everyone she had killed her child, and offer to carry visitors on her back like a horse. Most people refused, but the shame remained. At that time, Cernunnos Torf Lyant ruled Gwent is Coed in eastern Wales. He and his wife had no children. They owned a fine mare that gave birth to a foal every May Eve, but each time the foal disappeared without a trace. This year, Cernunnos stayed up to guard the mare. As soon as the foal was born, a huge claw reached through the window to grab it. Cernunnos drew his sword and cut off the arm. The creature screamed and fled. Cernunnos chased it but couldn't see in the dark, so he returned. Inside, next to the mare, he found a baby boy with golden hair wrapped in silk. He brought the child to his wife, and they named him Gráinne Golden Hair. They gave him the newborn colt as a gift. Later, they heard the story of Rhiannon and her lost son. Looking closely at the boy, they saw he looked just like Pwyll. So they decided to return him and end Rhiannon's suffering. They traveled to Dyfed and were warmly received. Cernunnos told the whole tale, and Pwyll and Rhiannon welcomed the boy with joy. "You have lifted my sorrow," said Rhiannon. "Then we'll name our son Pryderi, son of Pwyll," said Pwyll. After this, Pwyll made a lasting friendship and alliance with Cernunnos and his kingdom. Pryderi grew into a noble and strong man, and in time became ruler of the 7 cantrefs of Dyfed. When Bendigeidfran, the largest man in the world, ruled Britain, he sat one day on the shore with his brother Manawydan and his half-brothers Nisian and Efnisian. Nisian was kind and could make peace between enemies, but Efnisian often caused fights even among close friends. As they sat by the sea, they saw 13 ships sailing quickly from the west. "Tell my men to arm themselves," said Bendigeidfran. "We don't know what these strangers want." His warriors joined him on the shore. The ships were beautiful, with bright silk flags flying. On the lead ship, someone raised a shield as a sign of peace. "May you be blessed," said Bendigeidfran. "Who do these ships belong to?" "My lord," said the herald. "They belong to Matholwch, King of Ireland. He comes in peace and wishes to marry your sister Branwen to unite our kingdoms." "Let him come ashore," said Bendigeidfran. "We will talk." That night they held a grand feast in Bendigeidfran's hall, and it was agreed that Branwen would marry Matholwch. A wedding celebration was planned at Aberfrau. The next day, Efnisian saw the visitors' horses and asked who they were. When told they belonged to Matholwch, who had taken Branwen as wife, Efnisian grew furious. "They gave my sister away without asking me? That's an insult I won't allow." He grabbed his knife and cruelly cut the lips of the horses down to their teeth, sliced their eyelids to the bone, and cut off their ears and tails. When Matholwch found out, he was shocked and ashamed. Angry, he prepared to sail back to Ireland. Bendigeidfran heard what happened and rushed to stop him. "This wasn't my doing," he said. "It was Efnisian, my half-brother. I would punish him, but he is family. Still, I want to make things right. I'll give you fine new horses, gold and silver to restore your honor, and a special cauldron. If you place a dead man inside, he will rise again the next day, but he will not speak. I got it from your land, from Lasar Leis Gifnuid and his giant wife Simide Kiminfol." "I remember them," said Matholwch. "I once drove them from Ireland, but I accept your gifts and agree to peace." With the gifts received, Matholwch took Branwen home, and all seemed well. In Ireland, Branwen was warmly welcomed. All the nobles came to honor her, and she gave each one a gift. In time, she gave birth to a son, Gráinne, son of Matholwch. But in the second year, whispers of anger spread. The people remembered the insult to Matholwch in Britain and blamed him for not acting. His advisors urged him to do something. So Matholwch took revenge by casting Branwen out of his chambers and making her cook for the court like a servant. Worse still, each day his butcher came and slapped her ears with bloody hands. He also declared that no one was allowed to travel to Britain, so Branwen's family would not know what had happened to her. During this cruel time, Branwen raised a starling chick beside her bread trough. She taught the bird how to speak and trained it to look for her brother Bendigeidfran. Then she tied a message to its wing explaining her suffering and sent it flying across the sea to Britain. The starling finally reached Bendigeidfran's court and landed on his shoulder. Realizing this was no ordinary bird, he saw the note tied to its wing. After reading Branwen's message, he quickly gathered all his warriors from across Britain, including his brothers and half-brothers, and Pryderi, the son of Pwyll and Rhiannon. In those old days, the sea between Britain and Ireland was shallow. Bendigeidfran walked across the seabed, his head above water, as ships followed him. Matholwch's swineherds were on a hill when they spotted something unusual coming across the sea. They ran to their king and said, "My lord, we saw a mountain moving over the water beside a forest." On the mountain was a high ridge and 2 lakes. Matholwch called for Branwen and asked what this could mean. "It's my people coming to rescue me," she said. "The forest is their ship's masts. The mountain is my brother. He's so large no ship can carry him. The ridge is his nose and the lakes are his eyes." Panicked, Matholwch ordered his people to retreat west of the river Shannon. All the bridges were destroyed so that Bendigeidfran couldn't cross. When he reached the riverbank, his men said it was impossible to get across. "Then I shall be the bridge," Bendigeidfran replied. He lay across the river, and wooden planks were laid on his back so the army could cross. Then messengers from Matholwch arrived, seeking peace. They traveled to Dyfed and were warmly received. Cernunnos told the whole tale, and Pwyll and Rhiannon welcomed the boy with joy. "You have lifted my sorrow," said Rhiannon. "Then we'll name our son Pryderi, son of Pwyll," said Pwyll. After this, Pwyll made a lasting friendship and alliance with Cernunnos and his kingdom. Pryderi grew into a noble and strong man, and in time became ruler of the 7 cantrefs of Dyfed. When Bendigeidfran, the largest man in the world, ruled Britain, he sat one day on the shore with his brother Manawydan and his half-brothers Nisien and Efnisien. Nisien was kind and could make peace between enemies, but Efnisien often caused fights even among close friends. As they sat by the sea, they saw 13 ships sailing quickly from the west. "Tell my men to arm themselves," said Bendigeidfran. "We don't know what these strangers want." His warriors joined him on the shore. The ships were beautiful, with bright silk flags flying. On the lead ship, someone raised a shield as a sign of peace. "May you be blessed," said Bendigeidfran. "Who do these ships belong to?" "My lord," said the herald. "They belong to Matholwch, king of Ireland. He comes in peace and wishes to marry your sister Branwen to unite our kingdoms." "Let him come ashore," said Bendigeidfran. "We will talk." That night they held a grand feast in Bendigeidfran's hall, and it was agreed that Branwen would marry Matholwch. A wedding celebration was planned at Aberfrau. The next day, Efnisien saw the visitors' horses and asked who they were. When told they belonged to Matholwch, who had taken Branwen as wife, Efnisien grew furious. "They gave my sister away without asking me? That's an insult I won't allow." He grabbed his knife and cruelly cut the lips of the horses down to their teeth, sliced their eyelids to the bone, and cut off their ears and tails. When Matholwch found out, he was shocked and ashamed. Angry, he prepared to sail back to Ireland. Bendigeidfran heard what happened and rushed to stop him. "This wasn't my doing," he said. "It was Efnisian, my half-brother. I would punish him, but he is family. Still, I want to make things right. I'll give you fine new horses, gold and silver to restore your honor, and a special cauldron. If you place a dead man inside, he will rise again the next day, but he will not speak. I got it from your land, from Lasar Leis Gifnuid and his giant wife Simide Kiminfol." "I remember them," said Matholwch. "I once drove them from Ireland, but I accept your gifts and agree to peace." With the gifts received, Matholwch took Branwen home, and all seemed well. In Ireland, Branwen was warmly welcomed. All the nobles came to honor her, and she gave each one a gift. In time, she gave birth to a son, Gráinne, son of Matholwch. But in the second year, whispers of anger spread. The people remembered the insult to Matholwch in Britain and blamed him for not acting. His advisors urged him to do something. So Matholwch took revenge by casting Branwen out of his chambers and making her cook for the court like a servant. Worse still, each day his butcher came and slapped her ears with bloody hands. He also declared that no one was allowed to travel to Britain, so Branwen's family would not know what had happened to her. During this cruel time, Branwen raised a starling chick beside her bread trough. She taught the bird how to speak and trained it to look for her brother Bendigeid-Fran. Then she tied a message to its wing explaining her suffering and sent it flying across the sea to Britain. The starling finally reached Bendigeid-Fran's court and landed on his shoulder. Realizing this was no ordinary bird, he saw the note tied to its wing. After reading Branwen's message, he quickly gathered all his warriors from across Britain, including his brothers and half-brothers, and Pryderi, the son of Pwyll and Rhiannon. In those old days, the sea between Britain and Ireland was shallow. Bendigeid-Fran walked across the seabed, his head above water, as ships followed him. Matholwch's swineherds were on a hill when they spotted something unusual coming across the sea. They ran to their king and said, "My lord, we saw a mountain moving over the water beside a forest." On the mountain was a high ridge and 2 lakes. Matholwch called for Branwen and asked what this could mean. "It's my people coming to rescue me," she said. "The forest is their ship's masts. The mountain is my brother. He's so large no ship can carry him. The ridge is his nose and the lakes are his eyes." Panicked, Matholwch ordered his people to retreat west of the River Shannon. All the bridges were destroyed so that Bendigeid-Fran couldn't cross. When he reached the riverbank, his men said it was impossible to get across. "Then I shall be the bridge," Bendigeid-Fran replied. He lay across the river, and wooden planks were laid on his back so the army could cross. Then messengers from Matholwch arrived, seeking peace. But Manawydan refused. "No," he said, "we must avoid trouble. Let us move on and take up another craft." They moved to a second town and became shield makers. Once again, their work was better than anyone else's, and no one bought from the other armorers. The same jealousy grew, and the local craftsmen again plotted murder. Pryderi was furious. "We cannot allow this," he said. "Let us fight." But Manawydan again refused. "No," he said. "We'll leave. Let's try another trade." They moved to a third town and became shoemakers. Soon, no one bought shoes from anyone else. The shoemakers of that town also plotted to kill them. "This is too much," said Pryderi. "Now we must fight back against these envious fools." But again, Manawydan said no. "Let us return to Dyfed. Perhaps the people have come back." So they returned to Dyfed, but nothing had changed. The land was still empty, so they lived once again in Arbroath, hunting for food every day. One morning, while Manawydan and Pryderi were out hunting, their dogs ran ahead into a wooded area. Moments later, the dogs came running back in fear, chased by a large white wild boar. The boar led the men on a chase to a great fortress they had never seen before. Pryderi wanted to explore the place, but Manawydan warned him not to go inside, fearing it might be magic. Pryderi ignored the warning and entered the gate. At the center of the courtyard, he found a marble slab and a golden basin held by 4 chains that rose into the sky. When he stepped onto the slab and touched the basin, his hands and feet became stuck, and he could no longer speak. Manawydan waited outside the fortress until evening, but Pryderi never came back, so he returned alone to the palace at Arbroath. "Where is my son?" asked Rhiannon. Manawydan told her what had happened. "God knows," she said. "You have been a poor companion." She hurried into the woods and reached the fortress, where she found Pryderi stuck to the golden basin and unable to speak. She tried to help him, but the moment she touched him, she too became stuck and lost her voice. Then a heavy mist fell over the whole place, and the fortress vanished. When Manawydan heard of this, he was filled with grief. He promised Tigfa, Pryderi's wife, that he would stay with her and protect her, and that he would never take advantage of her. To survive, he started hunting again and planted a field of wheat to make bread. But one day, he found the stalks trampled and half-eaten by a swarm of mice. So he built a trap and managed to catch one mouse, larger than the others and too slow to escape. He brought the mouse to Tigfa. "This one stole our grain," he said. "Tomorrow I'll hang it." "Is it really worth the trouble?" Tigfa asked. "Even so, this thief must pay," said Manawydan. The next day, he went to the mound of Arbroath and built a small gallows. As he prepared to hang the mouse, a scholar came walking by. It had been 7 years since Manawydan had seen another person in Dyfed. "Greetings, Lord," said the scholar. "May I ask what you're doing?" "I'm hanging a mouse that stole from me," Manawydan answered. "That doesn't seem like work fit for a noble," said the scholar. "Let me pay you 1 pound for the mouse." "No," said Manawydan. "It must suffer for what its kind did." The scholar left, and soon a priest appeared. "Good day, Lord," said the priest. "Why are you dealing with this little creature?" "I'm punishing a thief," said Manawydan. "This is beneath you," the priest replied. "I'll pay 3 pounds for it to save your honor." "No," said Manawydan. "This mouse must die." The priest left, and then a bishop arrived with his men. "God bless you," said the bishop. "What are you doing here?" "Hanging a thief," said Manawydan. "Then I've come at the right time," said the bishop. "I don't want to see a great man like you do something foolish. I'll pay 7 pounds for the mouse." "No," said Manawydan. 24 pounds, then." "That's still not enough." "Then what do you want to let the mouse go?" asked the bishop. "Free Rhiannon and Pryderi," said Manawydan, "and lift the curse from this land." The bishop was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It will be done. Now, for God's sake, release the mouse." "First," said Manawydan, "tell me who you are and why you've done all this." After the final year, the hounds howled again. Math found a wolf and a she-wolf with a cub. He changed the cub into a handsome boy named Blydun. Then he struck the 2 wolves and turned them back into men. "Men," said the king, "you've suffered enough. You've carried the shame of bearing each other's children. Now go, wash, dress, and return to my hall." When Gylfethwy and Gwydion returned dressed as noblemen, the king spoke again. "I need a new maiden to rest my feet upon. Who should it be?" "Lord," said Gwydion, "the best choice is your niece, Arianrhod, daughter of your sister." So the king called for Arianrhod. "Are you a virgin?" he asked her. "I don't know for sure," she replied. The king placed his magic staff on the ground. "Step over this. If you are not a virgin, we'll find out." She stepped over the staff, and suddenly a golden-haired baby fell from her. Embarrassed, Arianrhod ran toward the door, but as she did, something else dropped from her onto the floor. Gwydion quickly picked it up, wrapped it in fine silk, and hid it in a chest at the foot of his bed. The king picked up the first child. "He will be baptized," he said, "and his name will be Dylan." As soon as Dylan was baptized, he ran to the sea and leapt into the waves. His body changed, and he swam like a creature of the deep. From that moment, he belonged to the ocean. Later, Gwydion was lying in bed when he heard crying from the chest. He opened it and found the baby, alive and flailing. He found a woman to nurse the boy and raised him with care and love, though the child still had no name. One day, Gwydion and the boy traveled to Arianrhod's home. She was glad to see Gwydion, but became angry and ashamed when she saw the child. "Why would you bring him here?" she asked. "He's a fine boy," said Gwydion. "There's no shame in that." "You shame me all the same," she replied. "So I curse him. He shall have no name unless I give it to him, and I never will." "Even so," said Gwydion, "you will give him a name." He left in anger. The next day, he gathered seaweed from the shore and used magic to shape it into a small boat. He made beautiful shoes from conjured leather. Then he changed both his and the boy's appearance, and they sailed to Arianrhod's house as if they were shoemakers. Arianrhod saw them from her window and asked her maid who they were. "They're shoemakers," said the maid. "See if they're any good," said Arianrhod. "Get my foot measurements and have them make me a pair of shoes." The maid visited them and was impressed by their skill. She asked for shoes for her lady, but Gwydion made them too big. When Arianrhod received them, she told her maid to order another pair. This time he made them too small. When the maid returned a third time, Gwydion said Arianrhod must come herself so he could measure her feet directly. She arrived, unaware of who he really was. As they spoke, a wren landed nearby. The boy picked up a stone and hit the bird on the leg. "What a perfect shot," said Arianrhod. "That fair-haired boy has struck it with a skillful hand." "Well then," said Gwydion, "you've just given him his name, Lleu and Blodeuwedd." The moment she spoke the name, the boat and all around them turned back into seaweed. "You tricked me," said Arianrhod. "But you haven't won. I now curse the boy again. He will never bear arms unless I give them to him, and I never will." "By God," said Gwydion, "you will give him weapons." Back at home, he trained the boy in every kind of skill and horsemanship. When Lleu was ready to be a warrior, Gwydion took him back to his mother's fortress. But first, he used magic to disguise them as wandering bards. Arianrhod welcomed them and hosted a feast. Gwydion and the boy sang and told stories, entertaining everyone. The next morning, Gwydion used his magic to make it seem like an army was attacking the castle. Trumpets blared, and the sound of battle filled the air. Arianrhod ran into the room in a panic and begged Gwydion and the boy to help defend her home. She gave them weapons and helped the boy prepare for battle. But then Gwydion smiled. "Lady," he said, "call off your guards and put away your weapons. There is no enemy. No one is attacking you." At that, the sounds of war stopped, and their disguises faded. Arianrhod realized she had been tricked again. "You've fooled me twice now," she said angrily, "but I'll have my revenge. I place a curse on this boy. He will never have a wife from any race of women on earth." Gwydion and the boy returned to Math's court and told him everything. "We will find him a wife all the same," said Math. He and Gwydion used their magic to create a woman from flowers, the most beautiful woman ever seen. They named her Blodeuwedd and gave her to Lleu as his wife. Math also gave Lleu a fine land to rule. One day, while visiting Math's castle with Lleu, Blodeuwedd saw a handsome hunter with his men. She asked who he was, and was told he was Gráinne, the lord of Penllyn. Blodeuwedd invited him to dinner. As soon as she saw him closely, she was overcome with desire. That night, while everyone else slept, she went to Gráinne's room, and they slept together until dawn. This happened again for 2 more nights. Then Blodeuwedd told Gráinne they must kill her husband, so they could be together. "But how?" Gráinne asked. "He's protected by magic." "I'll find out his weakness," she promised. The next day she went to Lleu, crying. "My love," she said, "I'm so afraid something will happen to you. I couldn't bear to lose you." "Don't worry," he said. "I'm hard to kill." "But please," she begged, "tell me exactly how someone could harm you, then I'll feel safe." Lleu told her that to kill him, someone would need to make a poisoned spear over the course of a year, only working on Sundays while people were at prayer. Also, he couldn't be killed indoors or outdoors, on horseback or on foot. His only weakness was standing with one foot on a tub beside a river and the other on a billy goat while someone threw the enchanted spear. "Thank heavens," she said. "No one will ever do such a thing." She quickly sent this information to Gráinne. A year later, she spoke again to Lleu. "My love, I've been thinking about what you told me. I still can't picture it. Will you show me?" Lleu, trusting her, agreed. He built the strange setup, placing a wooden frame over a tub by the river and finding a billy goat. When he stood with one foot on the goat and the other on the tub, Gráinne, who was hiding nearby, threw the finished spear. It struck Lleu in the side. Lleu gave a terrible cry and turned into an eagle. He flew away until he was out of sight. Gráinne took over his lands and lived with Blodeuwedd as her lover. When Math and Gwydion heard what happened, Gwydion said, "I won't rest until I find Lleu." He searched everywhere, but could not find him. At last, he stayed with a farmer in the woods who owned a fine sow. Each morning, the pig ran eagerly into the forest. Curious, Gwydion followed her. He found her eating rotting meat beneath a tall oak tree. Looking up, he saw a wounded eagle in the branches. Whenever the bird moved, pieces of rotten flesh fell to the ground, which the sow devoured. Gwydion knew at once it was Lleu. Then he sang, "There is an oak in the forest that shelters a prince in its boughs. If what I say is true, let Lleu come down to me." The eagle flew down and rested his head in Gwydion's lap. Gwydion touched the bird with his magic staff and transformed him back into a man. Lleu was in terrible shape, thin and broken. Gwydion took him back to Math's court, where they healed and cared for him until he regained his strength. After a year, Gwydion gathered his men and went to Blodeuwedd's castle. The woman made from flowers tried to flee, but he caught her. He didn't kill her. Instead, he turned her into an owl, a bird hated by others, and whose face still resembles a flower. As for Gráinne, he sent a message to Lleu, asking for peace. But Lleu refused land or gold. Instead, he demanded that Gráinne meet him on the riverbank where the betrayal had happened, and stand there while Lleu threw a spear at him in return. "My lord," said Gráinne, "I admit my guilt, but it was a woman who led me astray. I'll face your spear, but I ask to place a stone between us for protection." There are many early Welsh stories that continue the themes found in the Mabinogi. Like those tales, they take place in the noble courts of medieval Wales, but also draw deeply from the old myths of the Celtic past. One of the most famous among them is the story of Kulhwch and Olwen, which also contains one of the earliest mentions of King Arthur. Long ago, there was a king over all Britain named Beli Mór. He had 4 sons, Lludd, Caswallon, Niniaw, and Llewellais. When Beli died, his eldest son, Lludd, became king. Lludd ruled well and rebuilt the walls of his capital with many towers, filling it with fine homes for his people. He loved this city more than any other in his realm. It was named Caer Lludd after him, then Caer Lundain, and later it became known as London. Lud's closest brother was Lleulis, a wise and clever man. When Lleulis heard that the King of France had died and left only a daughter, he sailed to France, asked for the crown, and married the king's daughter. He was then made King of France. Some years later, Britain came under 3 terrible threats. The first was a race of evil beings called the Gráinne, who could hear every word spoken anywhere in the land, making it impossible to plot against them. The second was a terrible scream heard every May Eve, which scared every creature and made all the women and animals barren. The third was that once a year, all the food prepared in the king's court vanished overnight, except for what the nobles could eat that evening. Lud had no idea how to stop these disasters, so he sailed to France to ask Lleulis for help. Lleulis met him out at sea, and they tried to talk through a brass horn so the Gráinne wouldn't overhear them. But a demon inside the horn confused their words, so they couldn't understand each other. Lleulis poured wine down the horn to drive the demon away, and at last they could speak clearly. Lleulis then gave Lud advice on how to defeat the threats. For the Gráinne, he said to call a great gathering of all the people and the Gráinne. Lleulis gave Lud a special powder made from crushed mice that Lud would grow and prepare. This powder would kill only the Gráinne, but leave Lud's people unharmed. As for the second problem, Lleulis explained that the loud scream came from a battle between a British dragon and a foreign one. To stop it, Lud had to measure the whole island to find its center. There, he should dig a hole, fill it with mead, and cover it with a silk cloth. When the dragons came and fought in many shapes, they would finally become pigs and fall on the cloth. They would drink the mead, fall asleep, and could then be sealed in a stone chest and buried. As long as they stayed underground, no harm would come to Britain from outside. For the final threat, Lleulis revealed that a powerful magician came each year, played enchanting music to put everyone to sleep, and then stole all the food. Lud must prepare cold water and sit in it on the night the magician came, so he wouldn't fall asleep. Then he would be able to fight the thief and defeat him. Lud returned to Britain and did everything his brother advised. At the great feast, the Gráinne drank the poisoned water and all died. Lud found the exact center of the island, caught the dragons as they fought, and sealed them away in a stone chest beneath the earth. When the magician returned, Lud alone stayed awake in the cold water and defeated him in battle, forcing him to give back everything he had taken. In this way, Lud overcame the 3 great dangers that threatened the Isle of Britain and ruled his land in peace for the rest of his days. ChatGPT. In the days when Arthur ruled Britain, there lived a nobleman named Tegid Foel. His wife was Cerridwen, a woman of great magical power and skill in enchantment and prophecy. The couple had a son who was terribly ugly. They named him Morfran, meaning Great Crow, but he was also called Afagdu, or Utter Darkness. Despite his appearance, Cerridwen loved her son deeply and wanted to give him the gift of prophecy to make up for his ugliness. She learned that by gathering certain herbs and using her knowledge of magic, she could brew a potion that would give him great wisdom and foresight. But the potion had to be boiled in a large cauldron for a year and a day. When the time was right, only 3 special drops from the brew would grant the gift of prophecy. Cerridwen hired an old blind man to stir the cauldron and tend the fire. The blind man was led by a small boy named Gwion Bach, who also fed wood to the flames beneath the pot. As the final day approached, Cerridwen placed Morfran beside the cauldron, hoping he would receive the magical drops. Tired from her work, she rested. But when the 3 drops finally leapt from the cauldron, Gwion quickly pushed Morfran aside so he could catch them himself. The cauldron shattered with a terrible sound. Ceridwen woke and realized what had happened. Enraged, she chased Gwion as he fled. Because of the magic he had just absorbed, Gwion changed his shape to escape her. First, he became a hare. Ceridwen turned into a greyhound and chased him. They ran across the land, both changing into various animals. Eventually, Gwion turned into a single grain of wheat to hide in a barn. But Ceridwen, seeing through the trick, transformed into a black hen and ate him. She carried him inside her for 9 months and gave birth to him as a baby. When she saw how beautiful the child was, she could not bring herself to kill him. Instead, she wrapped him in cloth, placed him in a basket covered in hide, and set him adrift on the sea. 40 years later, there was a rich lord named Gwyddno Garanhir. His son Elfyn was kind-hearted but wasteful, and when his father's wealth was nearly gone, Elfyn was forced to live more simply. Still, his father allowed him to take all the salmon caught in his weir on All Hallows' Eve. When the day came, Elfyn visited the weir and found only 1 salmon. Disappointed, he also noticed a small basket caught in the net. Opening it with his knife, he saw the shining brow of a baby boy. "What a shining forehead," said Elfyn, in Welsh Tal Isin, and so the child was named Taliesin. Elfyn took the baby and placed him on his horse. As they rode, the infant began to sing, "Fair Elfyn, do not cry. No fish from this weir is better than I. Though I am small, I am full of gifts." When Elfyn returned home, he gave the child to his wife to raise. She cared for him lovingly, and from that day forward, Elfyn's fortunes began to improve. His name became respected across the land, and he was invited to the court of King Maelgwn for the Christmas feast. There, the nobles praised Maelgwn, calling him the greatest of all kings. His wealth, warriors, wife, and poets were second to none. Elfyn agreed with their praise, but added boldly, "Yes, Maelgwn is great in many ways, but not in every way. My wife is more faithful than any, and no poet in Britain can match my bard Taliesin." The king was insulted and resolved to prove Elfyn wrong. He threw Elfyn into prison and sent his son Rune to seduce Elfyn's wife. Rune was known as the most charming and seductive man in the land, and no woman had ever resisted him. But Taliesin, already wise beyond his years, foresaw the plan. He warned Elfyn's wife and advised her to switch places with a beautiful servant girl. The lady agreed and gave the maid her finest ring to wear as part of the disguise. Then she dressed as a servant and stood by the chamber. When Rune arrived, he was welcomed into the chamber and met the disguised maid. He spoke kindly and flattered her, then gave her wine mixed with a sleeping powder. After she passed out, he cut off her finger with the ring, wrapped it in his handkerchief as proof of his success, and spent the night with the girl, thinking she was Elfyn's wife. Rune returned to his father, King Maelgwn, and proudly told him what had happened, while Elfyn stood nearby, forced to listen. The king mocked Elfyn, saying he had been foolish to claim his wife was faithful, since they now had proof of her betrayal. The ring Rune had taken. "With your permission, my lord," said Elfyn calmly, "I believe you're mistaken. Look closely at the finger. The skin is rough, like someone who kneads dough, and the nail is not well kept. My wife's hands are soft and neat. Also, the ring was forced over a thick knuckle, while my wife's fingers are slim and graceful. Your son did not seduce my wife." This made the king furious. He threw Elfyn back in prison, demanding that he at least prove the other part of his boast, that his poet, Taliesin, was the greatest bard in the land. Taliesin, who knew everything that had taken place, soon made his way to Maelgwn's court. When he arrived, He quietly sat in a corner near the door without drawing attention. As the king's bards entered the hall, Taliesin pressed his finger to his lips and whispered, "Blerum, blerum" at them as they passed. When the bards reached the king and bowed, they tried to sing his praises, but all that came from their mouths was blerum, blerum. The king thought they were drunk, and angrily ordered a noble to strike the chief bard on the head with a silver platter, knocking him down in front of the entire court. "My lord," cried the bard, "we're not drunk. That boy in the corner has cast some kind of spell on us and made us sound like fools." The king ordered Taliesin to be brought before him. "Who are you?" he demanded. Taliesin answered in verse, "I am Elfin's chief bard. My home is the land of angels. I stood with God in heaven when Lucifer was cast out. I rode with Noah in the ark and survived the fall of Troy. I stood on the cross of the gentle Son of God. The prophet John called me Merlin, but kings now call me Taliesin. I am the chief bard of the West, now free Elfin from his chains." Just then, a mighty wind swept through the hall, shaking the walls. The king and his nobles feared the building might collapse, so Maelgwyn quickly ordered Elfin to be set free. Then Taliesin gave Elfin advice. "Wager with the king that your horse is the fastest in the land." Elfin agreed. On the day of the race, Taliesin arrived with 24 holly sticks, one for each of the horses racing, except Elfin's. He told the boy riding Elfin's horse to strike each horse he passed with one stick and throw it to the ground, and at the finish line to throw down his cap. The boy did exactly as Taliesin instructed, and won the race. The king and his nobles had no choice but to admit defeat. After everyone left, Taliesin told Elfin to dig where the cap had landed. Elfin dug into the earth and uncovered a massive cauldron filled with gold. "Elfin," said Taliesin, "this is your reward for rescuing me from the sea and raising me as your own." From that day on, Elfin was honored among the nobles of the land, and Taliesin was praised forever as the greatest bard in all of Britain. During the time when Arthur ruled Britain, there lived a nobleman named Cilid, son of Cilidin Vledig. He wished to marry a woman as noble as himself, and set his sights on Goludid, daughter of Anlod Vledig. She agreed to marry him, and after their wedding, she became pregnant. However, during her pregnancy, she lost her mind and wandered across the land, avoiding all people. When the time came for her to give birth, her senses suddenly returned, and she found herself near a pigsty, with a swineherd and his pigs nearby. So frightened by the pigs, she gave birth immediately. The swineherd brought both mother and child to Cilid's court. Because of the place of his birth, the baby was named Kulhwch, meaning pig run, though he was born of noble blood and was a cousin of King Arthur. As was the custom, the boy was sent into foster care to be raised by a noble family. Not long after giving birth, Goludid fell ill and knew her end was near. She called her husband to her side and told him that he could remarry after she died, but only when a briar grew on her grave. After she died, Goludid secretly instructed her tutor to tend her grave daily so that nothing would grow there. Every morning, Cilid sent a boy to check the grave, but the tutor always made sure it was clean. One day, however, the tutor forgot. That same day, Cilid went hunting and stopped by the grave. Seeing a briar growing there, he decided it was time to remarry. "I know a woman who would suit you well," said one of his men. "She is the wife of King Doged." Cilid and his men went and killed King Doged, then married his widow and took control of his lands. One day, Cilid's new wife was walking outdoors and came upon an old, toothless woman. She asked the hag about Cilid's children. "He has only one son," said the old woman, "named Kulhwch. He is away in foster care." The queen returned home and asked to meet Kulhwch. When he was brought to her, she decided to take revenge on Killid for killing her former husband. So she placed a curse on the boy. "You will never touch a woman until you win Olwen, daughter of Isbadadin, lord of the giants, and I curse you to fall hopelessly in love with her." At her words, Kulhwch blushed deeply and felt his whole body overcome with love for a girl he had never even seen. Determined to find and marry Olwen, he asked his father what he should do. "Go to your cousin Arthur," Cilid told him. "Ask for his help." So Kulhwch mounted his steed and rode to Arthur's court. When he reached the gates, the porter stopped him. "You may not enter," the porter said. "Food is on the table and drink in the horn. Only the son of a king or a skilled craftsman may come inside." "If you don't let me in," Kulhwch threatened, "I will curse you and Arthur. I will raise such a cry that every pregnant woman in the land will miscarry, and all others will become barren forever." "Wait here," said the porter. "I'll speak to the king." The porter told Arthur that a man more noble than any he had seen was waiting at the gate. Arthur, though it was against his custom, allowed him to enter. Kulhwch rode directly into the feasting hall on horseback and boldly demanded a gift from Arthur. If he was denied, he said, he would shame Arthur's name across the land. "By my sword, Caledfulch, and by my wife Gwenwyfor," said Arthur, "you shall have whatever you ask, but tell me your name." "I am Kulhwch, son of Cilid," the boy answered, "and I am your cousin." "Welcome, cousin," Arthur replied. "Now tell me what it is that you seek." "I want your help," Kulhwch said, "in winning Olwen, daughter of Isbadadin, chief of all giants, to be my wife." "I have never heard of her or her father," said Arthur, "but I will send my messengers to search for her." For a full year, Arthur's heralds traveled the land, but found no trace of Olwen. So Arthur gathered his finest warriors and pledged to join Kulhwch in the quest himself. Kulhwch rode out with Arthur's men, including the brave knight Kay, to search for the maiden. After traveling far and wide, they reached a great open plain. There before them stood the most magnificent castle they had ever seen, and in the fields outside grazed a large flock of sheep watched by a shepherd dressed in animal skins. "Whose sheep are these?" asked one of Arthur's knights. "They belong to the lord of that castle," said the shepherd, "Isbadadin, chief of the giants. We've come with Arthur to ask for his daughter, Olwen." "May God help you," said the shepherd. "No man who has asked for Olwen has ever survived." Kulhwch and the knights followed the shepherd to his home. His wife welcomed them and told them that Olwen came there every Saturday to wash her hair. She sent word to summon the girl. Olwen soon arrived, wearing a bright red silk robe and a golden necklace set with jewels. Her hair was golden like wildflowers, and her skin and chest were as white as sea foam. Her eyes shone brighter than any hawk's, and her cheeks were like rubies. Wherever she stepped, white clover bloomed in her path. She sat beside Kulhwch, and he said, "Maiden, I have loved you from afar and searched for you across the land. Come with me and be my wife, so that no one can accuse me of wrong." "I cannot go," said Olwen. "I made a promise to my father that I would not leave him without his blessing. He will only live until I marry. But if you truly love me, go to him and ask for my hand. Complete every task he gives you, and I will be yours. But if you hesitate, you will never have me, and you will not leave alive." "I will face every trial," said Kulhwch, "and I will win you." Olwen left, and Kulhwch and his companions went to Isbadadin's castle. The giant sat upon a massive throne, so large that his eyelids had to be raised by servants with iron forks. "Greetings," said Kulhwch. "I ask for your blessing to marry your daughter." "We'll see," grumbled Ysbaddaden. "If you want to marry Olwen, you'll first have to complete the tasks I give you." "I accept them all," said Kulhwch. "You say that now," said the giant, "but the tasks are many and near impossible." Ysbaddaden then gave Kulhwch a long list of difficult tasks, from bringing him the birds of Rhiannon to tracking and killing the great wild boar Turc Troith. Kulhwch agreed to them all, saying he would succeed with Arthur's help. The first task was to find Mabon, son of Modron, who was stolen from his mother when he was only 3 nights old and had never been seen since. To begin their search, Arthur and his men visited the ancient blackbird of Cilgri. "When I first came here," said the bird, "there was a blacksmith's anvil in this spot. I never pecked it, only rested my beak on it at night. It wore down to the size of a nut, but I know nothing of Mabon. Ask the stag of Redinfre." The men found the stag and asked the same question. "When I first came," said the stag, "a small oak sapling grew here. It rose tall with 100 branches. Now only a stump remains. I know nothing. Try the owl of Cwdm Cawlwyd." Arthur and his knights found the owl, older still. "When I arrived here, this valley was bare. A forest grew, was cut down, and another grew. And yet I've never heard of Mabon. You must seek the eagle of Gráinne, the oldest of all." When they found the eagle, he said, "I once perched on a mountain so tall it touched the stars. Now it is worn to the size of a hill. But I've heard nothing of Mabon, except from the salmon of Llyn Lleu." Arthur found the salmon and asked him. "With every tide," said the salmon, "I swim upriver to Caerloy. There, from within the walls, I hear deep weeping." They followed the river and heard the sorrowful voice from within the fortress walls. "Who cries behind these stones?" they asked. "I am Mabon, son of Modron," came the reply. "We'll set you free," they promised. Arthur and his men stormed the fortress and rescued Mabon, bringing him back to show Ysbaddaden their success. With Arthur's help, Kulhwch traveled across lands and seas, completing every task the giant gave him, no matter how impossible it seemed. Only one challenge remained. They had to get the blood of the pitch-black witch, daughter of the White Witch, who lived deep within a dark cave in the far north. Arthur sent 2 men into the cave, but they barely escaped. He sent more, but they too failed. At last, Arthur entered the cave himself and slew the witch with his sword. Her blood was gathered and brought back as demanded. With every task complete, Kulhwch, Arthur, and the warriors returned to Ysbaddaden's hall. "Is Olwen mine now?" asked Kulhwch. "She is," said Ysbaddaden, "but you must thank Arthur. And now, my time has come." Then Goro, one of Kulhwch's companions, grabbed the giant by the hair and cut off his head. They placed it on a spike in the castle courtyard. Kulhwch took control of Ysbaddaden's kingdom and spent the night with Olwen as his wife. The next morning, Arthur and his men returned home. The arrival of Christianity in Ireland did not bring an end to the ancient Celtic myths. Instead, the old traditions were woven together with Christian beliefs, especially in the stories of Ireland's most well-known saints, Patrick, Brigid, and Brendan. 2 brief letters written by Saint Patrick himself in the 5th century still survive. These rare texts offer a personal look at a man striving to share the Christian message, despite opposition both from the native Irish and from church leaders in Britain. A later and more legendary version of his life, written by the Irish churchman Muir Chew about 2 centuries after Patrick's death, combines myth and faith and is the source for much of the story told here. Very little is known for certain about the real Saint Brigid, except that she probably lived shortly after Patrick's time and established a monastic community at Kildare, west of Dublin, that welcomed both men and women. There are 3 early biographies of Brigid in Latin and Old Irish. and the version in this chapter is based on the 7th century account by Cogitosus. As for St. Brendan, he likely lived in southwest Ireland around the same time as Brigid. Almost nothing is known about his life, but the story of his legendary sea voyage, written down by the late 7th century, became a popular book throughout medieval Europe. Though it is clearly symbolic of the Christian journey, it may also preserve memories of real sea expeditions by Irish sailors across the North Atlantic. Patrick was born in Britain, across the sea from Ireland. When he was 16, Irish raiders kidnapped him from his family's estate and brought him to Ireland, where he was sold into slavery. His master was a druid named Miliach, and Patrick was made to tend sheep in the cold and rain, often hungry and alone. With no one else to turn to, he returned to the Christian faith he had known as a boy. Each day, he prayed 100 times, and just as many again during the night, asking for God's help. After 6 years, Patrick had a dream in which he heard a voice telling him to escape and find a ship waiting for him. He obeyed the voice, fled from his master, and found the ship. They sailed for 3 days and nights and landed in a wild, empty land with no food or water. Like the Israelites in the wilderness, they wandered without hope until Patrick prayed again for help. Soon after, a herd of wild pigs appeared. The men caught and ate them and were saved. Patrick returned to his family in Britain, who welcomed him with great joy. But back at home, he began to see visions calling him to return to Ireland and spread the Christian faith. He traveled across the sea to Gaul on his way to Rome, but stopped in the city of Auxerre, where he met a holy bishop named Germanus. Patrick stayed there for many years, training to become a priest. Eventually, God sent an angel named Victoricus to Patrick with a message. It was time for him to go back to Ireland. With the blessing of Germanus, and now ordained as a bishop, Patrick returned to Britain and then set sail once more for the land where he had once been enslaved. He was not alone. His companions Auxilius, Cernunnos, and other helpers joined him. At that time, a powerful pagan king named Lleu ruled from Tara, the royal seat of Ireland. He was surrounded by druids and magicians who practiced dark arts. 2 of his chief advisors, Lochru and Lucet Mile, could supposedly see the future through demonic powers. They had long warned Lleu, "A man will come across the sea with a shaved head and a staff curved at the top. He will chant strange words from a board in his house, and his followers will reply, 'Amen, let it be so.'" Lleu was still king at Tara when Patrick arrived on the coast of Ireland, landing first at Inberdee in Leinster. He then traveled north along the shoreline to Inverslane, near the Boyne River, and hid his boat there. His first mission was to find his former master, Miliach, and offer to buy his freedom, because under Irish law, Patrick was still legally a slave. A swineherd discovered Patrick and his followers near their boat and ran to tell his master, a man named Dichu. Believing they were thieves or raiders, Dichu went out with the intent to kill them. But he was a man of good heart, and when he saw Patrick, God moved him. Patrick preached to Dichu, and he became the first person in Ireland to convert to Christianity through Patrick's mission. Patrick then journeyed across the land to the mountain called Sliab Mis, where he had once served as a slave. But when his former master, Miliach, heard that Patrick was coming, the devil stirred fear in his heart. Rather than face a man he once owned who had now become powerful, Miliach set fire to his house, locked himself inside, and burned to death with all his possessions. From a distance, Patrick saw the smoke rising and understood what had happened. He stood still and wept, saying, "Why, Miliach? You chose fire over God. Because of this, your sons will never rule, and your family will serve others." Patrick left Miliach's land and preached across the nearby plains. It was there that the Christian faith began to grow. As Easter approached, Patrick talked with his companions about where to hold the first celebration of the holy day in Ireland. He chose the plain of Brega near Tara, the very heart of Irish paganism and idol worship. At the same time, the pagans were celebrating their own festival with rituals, chants, and ceremonies dedicated to their gods. The nobles and druids had gathered at Tara to light a sacred fire. According to tradition, no one in the land could light a fire before the king's fire was lit. But that evening, Patrick lit his own fire first, in full view of Tara. Furious, King Lleu summoned his druids and demanded to know who had dared break this law. Though they didn't know who had started the fire, the druids warned him that unless he put it out that night, the fire would spread, grow stronger than any other, and drive away the old gods forever, turning the hearts of all the people. Lleu was shaken, as was all of Tara. He declared he would find and kill the one responsible. He ordered his warriors to prepare for battle, and they set off to find Patrick. They found him nearby and brought him before the king. Lleu, the chief druid, mocked Patrick and the Christian faith. Patrick looked him in the eye and prayed. Instantly, Lleu was lifted high into the air and slammed onto a rock, his skull shattered. The crowd was filled with anger and fear, and the king ordered his soldiers to seize Patrick. But suddenly, darkness fell across the land, and the earth shook. The king's warriors were thrown from their horses, and many died. Only the king, his queen, and 2 others survived. The queen fell to her knees and begged, "Spare my husband. He will kneel before you." Though Lleu was still filled with rage and had plans to kill Patrick, he knelt before him to save his life. But Patrick knew what was truly in the king's heart. Before Lleu could gather more soldiers, Patrick transformed himself into a deer and escaped into the forest. The king returned to Tara with only a handful of men who had survived. The next day, Lleu and his followers gathered in the royal hall, still troubled by what had happened. Suddenly, Patrick and his companions appeared before them, though no door had been opened. Everyone was astonished. The king, wanting to test Patrick, invited him to eat at his table. Patrick accepted, fully aware of what would happen. During the meal, the druid Lleu secretly dropped poison into Patrick's cup. But Patrick blessed the cup, and the wine turned solid like ice. He tipped it over, and the poison fell out. Then he blessed the cup again, and the wine turned liquid once more. After the meal, Lleu challenged Patrick to a contest of miracles on the plain before Tara. "What kind of miracle do you suggest?" asked Patrick. "Let us summon snow upon the land," the druid answered. "I will not do anything that goes against God's will or nature," Patrick replied. "You're only saying that because you know you'll fail," said the druid. Then Lleu spoke his spells, and snow began to fall, covering the whole plain up to a man's waist. "You've shown us what your magic can do," Patrick said. "Now let's see if you can undo it. Make the snow vanish." ChatGPT. "I won't be able to make the snow disappear until tomorrow," said Lleu. Patrick then lifted his hands and blessed the land, and at once the snow vanished. The people were amazed and cheered for him, but the druids were furious. Next, the druid called on his dark gods and brought darkness over the land. The people were terrified and begged him to restore the light, but he couldn't. Patrick prayed to God, and suddenly the sun shone brightly again, and the people rejoiced. After these miracles, the king suggested a test. Both Patrick and the druids should throw their holy books into water to see which one would be unharmed. Patrick agreed, but the chief druid refused. He had heard that Patrick baptized with water and claimed water was sacred to him. "Then throw your books into fire," said the king. Again the druid refused, saying fire was sacred to Patrick too. "That's not true," said Patrick. "Let's do this. You go into a house with one of my followers. You wear my robe and he'll wear yours. We'll fill the house with both dry and wet wood, seal it and set it on fire. Let the true God decide who is protected." The druid accepted. A house was prepared with one half of dry wood and the other of wet. Patrick sent his young disciple Benignus into the dry side, wearing the druid's robe. The druid went into the wet side, wearing Patrick's robe. The house was then locked and set ablaze. By Patrick's prayers, the fire consumed the druid and his part of the house completely, while Benignus was left unharmed. Patrick's robe was untouched by the flames, but the druid's robe was burned to ashes. The king was furious, but Patrick said to him, "Unless you believe now, you will die. The wrath of the Lord is upon you." Lleu gathered his advisors to ask what he should do. "It is better to believe than to die," they told him. So the king went to Patrick to be baptized, though with reluctance. "You come now," said Patrick, "but it would have been better if you had believed from the start. You will remain king, but none of your descendants will rule after you." After this, Patrick traveled across Ireland, preaching the gospel, baptizing those who believed in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and showing the power of God through many miracles. Around this time, in pagan Britain, there lived a young woman named Monison, the daughter of a king. She was inspired by the Holy Spirit and refused every offer of marriage. Though her parents beat her and tried to force her to change, she stayed firm, always asking who had made the world and the lights in the sky, for she was seeking the Creator through the wonders of nature. Her parents were at a loss. When they heard of Patrick's works in Ireland, they brought her across the sea to speak with him. "Do you believe in God?" Patrick asked. "With all my heart," she said. Patrick baptized her with water and the Holy Spirit, and the moment he did, she fell down dead. She was buried in Ireland, and 20 years later her remains were moved with honor to a chapel nearby, where they are still venerated. At this time, a wicked British king named Cormac became known for persecuting and killing Christians. Patrick sent him a letter urging him to repent and follow God, but Cormac laughed at him. When Patrick heard this, he prayed and asked God to remove the king from the world forever. Not long after, Cormac heard music and a voice singing to him that his time as king had ended. Then his family and followers joined in the song. Suddenly, in front of them all, Cormac was transformed into a fox and fled the palace, never to be seen again. During these days, there was a savage pagan in Ulster named Cumhaill Macu Gracha, known for his cruelty and murder. People called him the Cyclops. One day he was sitting on a hill, looking for travelers to rob or kill, when he saw Patrick walking down the road. Curious, he decided to play a trick before killing him. He had one of his men pretend to be terribly ill and brought him to Patrick to be healed. "If he had truly been sick," said Patrick, "you would not be surprised by what has happened." Cumhaill pulled back the cover and saw that the man was dead. Shocked and ashamed, the outlaw was overcome with guilt. "Forgive me, Patrick," he said. "I admit my evil and place myself under the judgment of your God." Patrick baptized Cumhaill and told him that if he truly wanted God's forgiveness, he must go to the sea, get into a small boat with no food, water, or oars, and trust God to decide his fate, whether it be life or death. "I will do as you say," said Cumhaill. He went to the sea, chained his feet, and threw away the key. Then he set off in the boat. The north wind blew for days until he landed on an island where 2 holy priests lived. They taught him the Christian faith, and he remained there the rest of his life. In time, he became a bishop known for his holiness and wisdom. One Sunday, Patrick was preaching near the sea, but was disturbed by the noise of some pagans digging a ditch around a fort. He told them not to work on the Lord's Day, but they ignored him. "You'll gain nothing from this work," he warned. The next day, a great storm came and destroyed everything they had built, just as Patrick had said. There was once a rich and respected pagan man in Ulster named Lleu. Patrick asked him for a piece of land on a hill to build a church, but Lleu instead gave him lower ground. Patrick accepted it without complaint. Later, Lleu sent a horse to graze on Patrick's land, which angered the saint. The next day, the horse was found dead. Furious, Lleu ordered his servants to kill Patrick, but before they could act, Lleu himself fell down dead. His servants rushed to Patrick and begged for help. Patrick blessed a cup of water and told them to sprinkle it on the horse. They did, and the horse came back to life. They also sprinkled it on Lleu, as Patrick had expected, and he too was revived. Grateful, Lleu gave Patrick the hill he had first asked for. There, Patrick built the church that became the holy city of Armagh. One day, Patrick passed by a grave marked with a cross without noticing it. Later, when his charioteer told him, Patrick was upset. It was his custom to stop and pray at every cross he passed. That night, he left his lodging and returned to the grave. Using the powers God had given him, Patrick asked the dead man in the grave who he was. "I was a pagan," the man replied, "but a Christian from another land died nearby. His mother, not knowing which grave was his, mistakenly placed the cross on my grave." Patrick said that was why he hadn't seen the cross. It was not over a Christian grave. He ordered the cross to be moved to the proper place and then returned to his lodging. Patrick never traveled on Sundays. Once, while sleeping in a field on the Lord's Day, a heavy rain came down. Everything around was soaked, but not the ground where Patrick slept. His charioteer came crying, saying the horses had run off in the storm and he couldn't find them. "God always hears us when we need him," Patrick said. Then he raised his hand, and his fingers shone with a bright light like stars. With that light, the charioteer found the horses and stopped weeping. When Patrick's life was nearing its end, an angel came to him and told him that God would grant him 4 final wishes. First, that his spiritual authority would always remain in Armagh. Second, that anyone who sang his hymn would have their sins judged by him. Third, that the family of Dichu, the first man to welcome him to Ireland, would be shown mercy and would not perish. And lastly, that all Irish people would be judged by him at the end of the world. So on the 17th of March, at the age of 120, Patrick left this life and entered the presence of God. Holy Bridget was born in Ireland to Christian parents of noble birth. Her father was named Dubthach, and her mother Broisek. From a young age, Bridget was known for being modest, self-controlled, and eager to do good. One day, when Bridget was old enough, her mother asked her to churn milk into butter. But Bridget, wanting to help the poor, gave away all the butter she made. When her mother returned and saw there was no butter, Bridget was scared. But God answered her prayers and miraculously restored all the butter. Everyone who saw this praised God and the deep faith of this kind-hearted girl. Later, her parents decided she should marry, as was expected in those days. But Bridget wanted to stay a virgin and dedicate her life to God. She went to a priest named Cumhaill and asked to become a nun. As he placed the veil on her head, she knelt at the altar and touched the wooden base. That spot is still green today and is believed to heal those who touch it with faith. One day, Bridget was cooking bacon for visitors. She saw a hungry dog and gave him some. Yet when she served the food, there was just as much bacon as before. The guests were amazed and praised her strong faith and God's blessing. Another time, while harvesting grain, dark clouds gathered and heavy rain fell across the land. But God protected Brigid's fields, and no rain touched them. She and her workers were able to gather the harvest from morning to evening. On one occasion, while Brigid was tending sheep, a heavy rainstorm soaked her. She went into a nearby house in her wet clothes. Inside, she saw a bright ray of sunlight shining through a small opening. Thinking it was a solid beam of wood, she hung her wet clothes on it. They stayed as if it were real wood. When the owners saw this, they were amazed and praised God. Another day, a young thief wanted to test Brigid's generosity. He came to her 7 times, each time in different clothes, asking for a sheep to feed his family. Brigid gave him a sheep each time, but at the end of the day, when the sheep were counted, none were missing. The thief, shocked by what he saw, returned the 7 sheep. When they were counted again, the flock still had the same number as in the morning. Once, some lepers asked Brigid for beer, but she had none. Seeing water ready for a bath, she blessed it, and by faith, it turned into beer. She gave the drink to the thirsty men in great amounts. There was a young nun who had taken a vow of virginity, but had given in to temptation and become pregnant. She came to Brigid in shame. Brigid prayed over her, and by her great faith, the child vanished, and the young woman was restored to virginity. One day, a woman came to visit Brigid with her 12-year-old daughter who had never spoken. Brigid greeted them kindly and held the girl's hand. She asked her what she wanted to do with her life. The mother said the girl couldn't speak, but Brigid said she would not let go of her hand until she did. Then the girl spoke, saying she wanted to serve God like Brigid. From that moment, she could talk. One day, some wicked men from another province stole Brigid's cattle. On their way back, they tried to cross a shallow river. Suddenly, the river rose like a wall and swept the men away, drowning them. But the cattle were unharmed and returned to Brigid's land on their own. While Brigid was in the forest with her pigs, a wild boar ran into the herd. It was frightened, but Brigid gently approached it and blessed it. The animal calmed down and stayed near her without fear. There was once a foolish man who saw a fox in the fort of a local king and killed it, not knowing it was a trained fox loved by the king for its tricks. The king was furious and said he would kill the man and his family unless they found another fox that could do the same tricks. Brigid heard what had happened and felt pity for the man. She prayed to God, and a wild fox came to her from the woods. The fox performed all the same tricks as the first one. The king was delighted and let the man go free. Brigid went back to her home, but the clever fox ran away from the king's fort and returned to the forest, with the king's men chasing after it. One day, while Brigid was preaching the gospel in her homeland, she saw 9 strange-looking men acting wildly. They were followers of an evil cult that worshipped the devil. They had promised to commit murder and violence before the month ended. Brigid, full of kindness and faith, spoke to them and tried to convince them to turn from their evil ways. But they refused to listen. After they left her, they believed they saw a man on the road. They attacked him with swords and cut off his head. Feeling proud, they carried the bloody head and weapons through the fields to show what they had done. But God had worked a miracle. At Brigid's prayer, the man they killed was only an illusion sent by God, so they had not harmed anyone. When the men realized what they had done, they were filled with guilt and turned their hearts toward God in repentance. At that time, there was a rich and lustful man who desired a beautiful young woman, but she refused him. He made a plan to trick her. He gave her a silver brooch to keep safe then stole it back secretly and threw it into the sea. He then accused her of losing it and said that because she had failed, he would take her as a slave to use her as he pleased. Terrified, the young woman went to Brigid and asked for help. While they were talking, one of Brigid's servants came in with a fish he had caught. Brigid told him to cut the fish open, and inside was the very same silver brooch. Later, when the man took the woman to court and demanded she be given to him, she took the brooch from Brigid and returned it to him in front of everyone. The man dropped to his knees and admitted his sin. The woman thanked God for saving her and returned home safely. Another time, the king of the land ordered all the tribes to help build a road across the country. The road was to be strong enough for wagons and horses, using logs and stones even through swamps and fields. The hardest part of the road, near a swampy river, was assigned to Brigid's small clan. They asked a bigger clan to switch places, but they were mocked and sent away. Brigid's people came to her for help, but she told them to trust in God, who controls all creation. The next morning they saw that the river had moved away from their land, and now ran through the land of the people who had laughed at them. In this way, God honored the humble and humbled the proud. Even after Brigid died, her miracles continued. One day, the abbot of her monastery asked his workers to bring a millstone from a mountain. They found the stone easily, but it was too heavy to carry down. The abbot told them not to give up and to roll the stone down the slope. He prayed to Brigid that it would not break. As it rolled, it avoided obstacles and landed safely at the bottom. Then the workers brought it to the mill with oxen. The millstone was put into use, and the monks were able to grind their grain for food. But one day, a druid sent his grain with a Christian man to the mill. The stone refused to turn. The workers realized the grain came from a druid and replaced it with wheat from their own fields. Then the stone turned again. Later, the mill caught fire, and everything inside was destroyed except the stone, which remained whole. It was placed outside the church as a sign of Brigid's miracles. To this day, people who touch the stone with faith are healed of sickness and disease by Brigid's holy power. Saint Brendan, the son of Findlug, was born in Munster and became the spiritual guide of many monks. One day, while Brendan was praying in a meadow, a priest named Bran came to him in the evening. The priest began to weep and fell to the ground until Brendan lifted him up and kissed him, asking what was wrong. Bran told him about a hermit named Murnoch, who had sailed across the sea and found a place called the Island of Delight. When Bran went to visit, he saw many monks living in separate small huts. They would come together to eat and worship God. While there, Bran and Murnoch found a small boat and decided to search for the promised land of the saints, a place God would give to his people at the end of time. After sailing for a short time, they entered a thick fog and saw a bright light around them. They landed on a green, beautiful island and found a river. Standing near it was a man dressed in shining light. He told them to rejoice because they had found the land they were looking for. But he also said they could not stay and sent them back to the Island of Delight. The monks there were glad to see them and were amazed by the sweet smell of paradise on their clothes. Bran finished his story and left. The next day, Brendan gathered 14 monks and suggested they search for the promised land of the saints. The monks told him they had already left their homes and riches to follow him, and they would go anywhere he led them. Brendan and the monks went to the western coast of Munster to build a boat. They made a wooden frame and covered it with cowhides soaked in oak bark, sealing the seams with fat. They added a mast and packed food for 40 days. Just before they left, 3 more monks arrived and begged to join them. Brendan, knowing through God's wisdom that these new men would face trouble, still allowed them to come. They raised the sail and began their journey west. After 15 days, the wind stopped, so the monks began to row. Then Brendan said, "Brothers, stop rowing. Pull in the rudder and sails. Let God guide us wherever He wants." After 40 days, they ran out of food. Then they saw a high, rocky island to the north. Water poured down its cliffs, but they couldn't reach it or find a place to land. The monks were weak from hunger and thirst. Brendan told them not to worry. God would show them a place to land in 3 days. As Brendan said, on the 3rd day they found a small landing spot just big enough for their boat. On shore, they were met by a dog who led them to a large hall filled with beds and seats. On the table inside were fresh bread, fish, and wine. The walls were beautifully decorated and had silver-covered horse bridles. "Be careful not to be tempted by these treasures," Brendan said. "Pray for the soul of anyone who gives in to evil." The monks gave thanks and enjoyed the food and drink. After they finished, Brendan told them to rest for the night. But during the night, Brendan saw something troubling. The devil had taken the shape of a small Ethiopian boy and was speaking with one of the new monks. Brendan prayed hard for this brother. In the morning, after worship, they prepared to return to the boat. But a table appeared before them again, full of food and drink. They stayed for 3 days, and each day God provided for them. On the 4th day, Brendan warned them not to take anything from the island. "We wouldn't do that," they answered. "One of you already has," Brendan replied, looking at the monk who had spoken with the devil. The man fell to his knees and cried, "I have sinned, Father. Please forgive me and pray for me so I don't die." Brendan lifted him up, and they all saw a small black figure leap from his chest and fly away crying. Brendan then told the monk that he would soon die. After receiving communion, the man's spirit left his body and was taken to heaven by angels, and his body was buried there on the island. As Brendan and the monks prepared to leave, a young man came running to them with a basket of bread and a jar of water. He told Brendan that they had a long journey ahead, but they would not run out of food or water before Easter. Brendan thanked him for the gift and sailed back into the ocean. On their journey, they ate every other day while their boat drifted across the sea. One day, they saw an island nearby. A good wind helped them reach it and find a place to land. As they walked around, they saw many sheep, all bright white. There were so many that they could barely see the ground. Brendan told his monks to take one perfect sheep for their meal. Suddenly, a man appeared, carrying a basket of bread and everything they needed. He bowed before Brendan 3 times, lying flat on the ground. Brendan helped him up and welcomed him. The man told them they would stay on this island for Holy Saturday, then go to another island for Easter. After Easter, they would travel to a place called the Paradise of Birds and remain there until 8 days after Pentecost. Brendan asked the man why the sheep were so large, as big as cows. The man said no one was there to milk them, and winter never reached the island. Brendan and his monks set off in their boat to celebrate Easter on the nearby island. But before they reached it, their boat ran aground. The monks got out and spent the night on the land, but Brendan stayed in the boat because he knew what the island really was. In the morning, he told them to sing the holy service and smoke some fish over a fire. But as soon as they lit the fire, the ground began to move. Brendan told them to hurry back into the boat and push away. The island began moving into the sea. Brendan calmed them, saying, "Do not fear." This was no island. It was the largest fish in the sea, called Gisconius. He always tries to touch his head with his tail, but he's too big. Then they sailed to the Paradise of Birds. On the southern shore, they found a small river from a spring where they could land. Above the spring was a giant tree filled with white birds. Brendan sat by the spring and looked at the birds. One of them flew down beside him. The sound of its wings was like bells. It opened its wings in joy and spoke to Brendan. "You wonder who we are," it said. "We were angels once, but when the great battle in heaven happened, we chose neither God nor Lucifer. So God sent us here, not punished, but apart from the angels who stayed loyal. We roam the skies as spirits, but on holy days and Sundays we become birds to sing praise to God. Holy Father, your journey is only beginning. You still have 6 more years before you reach the promised land." Brendan and his monks stayed there until after Pentecost, listening to the birds' songs. Then they raised the sails and went back into the sea. Their boat was pushed across the ocean for 3 months, and all they saw was water and sky. Just as their food ran out, they saw an island far away, but the wind kept them away. After 3 days of prayer and fasting, they found a small inlet and landed. An old man with white hair met them and hugged each one. Brendan tried to speak, but the man made signs asking them to be silent. He led them to a monastery where monks washed their feet and brought them to a dining room filled with bread. Finally, the abbot spoke and told Brendan they were 24 monks who lived by God's grace. Every day, 12 loaves of bread appeared for them. They had lived there for 80 years since the time of St. Patrick, without growing old or weak. Brendan and his monks stayed for many days. The monks gave them food, and they sailed again. For 20 days, the sea carried them in a circle. Then God sent a new wind. For years, Brendan and his monks visited many strange islands. On one, called the Island of Strong Men, one of the late-coming monks stayed behind. Another island had red grapes as big as apples. They saw a crystal tower in the middle of the ocean, taller than the sky. They also found the Island of Smiths, where huge men threw burning metal at their boat. One day, they saw a tall, smoky mountain in the sea. Its cliffs were steep and black like coal. Suddenly, the last monk who had joined them late jumped into the water and swam to shore, as if he had no control over himself. He called back to Brendan and the monks, but they couldn't help. A group of demons appeared and set him on fire to punish him for his sins. Brendan and his brothers sailed away in sadness, watching the fiery mountain glow in the dark. After they had sailed for 7 days away from the Island of Fire, Brendan and his monks saw a man sitting on a rock in the middle of the sea. Waves crashed all around him, but he remained there alone. Brendan asked him who he was and how he came to be there. "I am Judas," the man replied. "I am here by the mercy of Jesus Christ. This is not a place of punishment, but a place of rest given to me in honor of his resurrection. Every night, except on Sundays and holy days, I burn like molten lead in the fiery mountain you saw. But now, by God's mercy, I ask you to pray that I may stay here until sunrise." Brendan agreed. But that evening, a group of demons arrived to take Judas back. "Leave this place, man of God," they said. "We cannot touch him while you are here." "Why do you protect this man with the name of the Lord?" they shouted. "He is the one who betrayed him." "Still," said Brendan firmly, "you cannot touch him until the new day begins." The demons screamed and ground their teeth in anger, but they obeyed. At sunrise, they came back, grabbed Judas, and dragged him off to the Island of Fire. Brendan and his monks sailed on. 3 days later, their boat reached a small rocky island that looked sharp and dark like flint. They found a spot to land and met a man named Paul. He was a hermit covered in long white hair from head to foot. He welcomed each monk by name and said he had come long ago from St. Patrick's monastery. He had lived there in a cave drinking only from a small spring nearby. Paul told Brendan that his long journey was nearly over. The land promised to the saints was close. Soon after, Brendan and his brothers left the island and sailed for 40 days into a thick fog. When the sky cleared, they saw a wide and beautiful land filled with bright light. They landed and walked through this wonderful place, amazed by trees full of fruit and the peaceful light that never faded, because the Lord Jesus himself was the light there. At the center of the island, they found a cold and fast river. As they stood by it, a young man appeared and told them they could not cross. He told Brendan that it was not yet time for him to stay in that land. Instead, he must return home and rest with his ancestors. Brendan and his monks left the island with heavy hearts. They passed again through the fog and quickly returned to the Island of Delight, the place from where they had first set out. The land promised to the saints had never truly been far. From there, they traveled back to Munster and returned to their monastery. Their brothers welcomed them with great joy, and tears filled their eyes when Brendan said that his time on earth was almost over. After setting all things in order and receiving the holy sacraments, Brendan gave his soul to the Lord, to whom belongs all glory and honor from ages past to ages still to come.